Hello, today I'm presenting Improving Spaces for Women First Responders. This work was conducted with Dr. John Mielke and Dr. Elena Niederman through the University of Waterloo, and it consists of a qualitative and comparative analysis of the occupational experiences of women who work as firefighters, police officers, and paramedics across Southern Ontario. And so looking first at the Canadian workforce, we can see here that there is some variation in the gender ratios of the three professions that we studied, where women make up approximately 37% of paramedics, about 22% of police, and about 4% of career firefighters in Canada. So we're looking at roughly 30,000 individuals across the country. And so looking at the literature, this work is rooted in calls for the modernization of the public safety sector, and this includes goals related to gender equity, diversity, and inclusion. Literature suggests that workplace culture plays a significant role in advancing EDI, and despite some of the efforts to improve this, women remain substantially underrepresented in the field. So looking at research on first responders, there are actually very few studies that consider women first responders as a collective group, and those that do tend to focus on their mental health. And so when looking at the profession-specific literature, collectively, it suggests that women take on additional risks to their health and well-being in order to do this work. What little research there is on the topic focuses on the physical and mental factors of the work, ill-fitting equipment, harassment and discrimination, and work-life balance. And it also looks at masculine archetypes and the hypermasculine environments in which this work is conducted, as well as workplace cultures and barriers to career development. However, up until this study, there has not been any qualitative or comparative investigation into the experiences of women first responders within Canada. And so given that so little is known about this population, our main research question that we set out to investigate was what are the occupational experiences of women paramedics, police officers, and firefighters in Southern Ontario. Our methodology employed grounded theory in conjunction with a comparative analysis framework and a gender-based analysis plus approach. Our study included individuals who self-identify as women, and our participants were either currently working, were on leave, or had recently left the service. We shared our recruitment poster that's shown here on the right with key contacts in the field as well as over social media, and we were able to conduct 20 single-point interviews either over Zoom or over the phone. Our participants ranged from 27 to 58 years in age, and everyone in the sample identified as female-gendered, white, and English-speaking. The length of service among participants ranged from just 2 weeks to a career spanning 37 years, with an average of just over 13 years. And these women worked predominantly in cities, with some in rural and mixed environments. And so the interviews broke down to 8 police officers, 7 paramedics, and 5 firefighters. So let's have a look at what these women told us. So the overarching story that our participants shared with us was how much the field had changed over recent years. They described how many more women colleagues they have now compared to when they were in the field at the beginning of their careers, how many more supports they have, and how workplace cultures have been getting more inclusive and respectful. Women also described a trajectory of their own harassment and discrimination. Participants who would have laughed it off or took it on the chin in the early stages of their careers described developing the sense of seniority in their position and sense of strong professional reputation that enabled them to stand up for themselves and their women colleagues. And as such, the current presence and work of women in these professions are actively shaping and reforming workplaces to better support women. And so these developments have made varying levels of space for women in these organizations. Participants described how being a woman can be an asset in some situations. Women are largely viewed as experts in communication and de-escalation skills in situations involving pregnant women and children or victims of trauma surrounding men, and can leverage their own life experience to better understand, empathize with, and advocate for their clients. Yet participants also described how being a woman can introduce further challenge to the work. Women in our society are still largely regarded as responsible for raising children and performing domestic work and balancing family demands with their careers. Some participants described convoluted or murky processes for accessing maternity leave, and many participants described the challenges of childcare while working variable shift work schedules. In the case of paramedicine and police services, where women represent greater numbers of the workforce, they tended to have more supportive technologies, adapted equipment, and uniforms designed specifically for women's bodies. And in these cases, we can see that it is the organizations which are adapting to the women that they employ. However, in many fire departments, there remains very few women at all levels of the organizations. And this positions women to need to assimilate to their surroundings, in which they must become one of the guys in order to be successful. Furthermore, women who are vastly outnumbered are often subject to increased visibility and scrutiny from their colleagues. And this tokenism results in women having precarious reputations and needing to continually prove themselves. And so we've learned that women are still facing sexism and glass ceilings in this work. Participants described layers of social resistance from their colleagues and their clients. While many described being well supported by their immediate coworkers, they also described specific language or gestures that were used to separate them from the rest of their workforce, such as referring to women with a derogatory code PW for policewoman. Many paramedics also described regularly being scrutinized by patients and other healthcare professionals who vocally questioned their skills and abilities. Generational differences among colleagues and patients were often used to justify these responses. And workplace cultures and paramilitary structures also seem to shape social inclusion, which is clearly important for one's mental health, mental safety, one's access to resources such as mentorship, and to career development success. And while social unity is clearly important for all three professions, it seemed to be most relevant for firefighters who replicate a home life at work and so often work interconnectedly in large teams. And as such, this inclusion is even more important for women firefighters who must assimilate themselves with their organizational norms. We also found that very few women hold leadership or senior management positions. Barriers to promotion for women often include having to balance home life with additional training that takes place above and beyond their regular work, particularly in paramedicine. Senior level police officers described taking on training during their maternity leaves or returning to work prematurely for fear of missing promotional opportunities or being perceived as someone who doesn't care about their work. And in the face of public pressure, we've been told that women are at times being promoted without the necessary skills and abilities. And as these women inevitably struggle and potentially fail in very public situations, as in the case of policing, it can come at the cost of women's professional reputations, both as individuals and as a larger group. And it clearly impacted the confidence that colleagues had in these women and the confidence that these women had in themselves. And so, despite some of these persisting challenges, women are deeply passionate about the work that they do. In the face of so much challenge, our participants described how much they loved their work and their coworkers and how they encourage other women to join them. Women described how they actively mentor and defend one another and regularly find male colleagues to do the same. Our participants' favorite parts of the job included the high adrenaline moments of driving at high speeds with lights and sirens, fighting injustices in dynamic work environments, and how powerful they feel when they genuinely help someone through a crisis. These women described feeling deeply connected to their communities and nourished by the constant intellectual challenges of their work. And so in light of hearing from women first responders, we propose the following recommendations. Ensure that women have access to uniforms and equipment that fit properly, including multiple sets of uniforms. Offer on-the-job paid training that provides skills and that are required for advancements and promotion. Support women during and after promotions by providing ongoing training and mentorship. Create scheduling approaches that offer workers more opportunities to shape their regular schedules, such as time of day or day off. establish formal childcare supports with flexible options that address first responders' specific needs, and create legislation that mandates the delivery of EDI training for workers and leaders in all professional levels and geographic regions. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing any questions or comments you may have.